Welcome, welcome to Authors Across the Multiverse. I'm your host, Kelly Guentner. This is my friend Karin Nordin. We are going to talk about all the ins and outs of our publishing journeys. So, first of all, as always, everything I do is hosted by the Serial Box Network. They own me. Not really, but you know what? They are very gracious hosts, and thank you to them. Thank you, Johnny. And we are here to answer all your questions. We have very different publishing journeys, and we thought it would be fun to compare and contrast. Karin, I'm going to give your intro because you are not going to sing your praises enough. So
That's
I'm going to
true.
embarrass
I
you.
won't.
So, Karin is a very talented cosplayer, very talented writer. She's just amazing. She's written some Nordic thriller fiction, and her first novel, Where Ravens Roost, was shortlisted for the 2022 CWA John Creasy Dagger Award. And her second novel was a 2022 ITW Best Ebook Award nominee. So you've got some nominations under your belt because you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So I knew you wouldn't mention that, so I
No.
need to mention it for you.
It's funny. I don't know. It's funny in the publishing world, but I think a lot of authors are this way. You get a nomination, and even if you win, it's kind of like, okay, we'll just put it on the resume, and thank you for the food.
You're welcome. Yeah, you even flew all the way out to New York for the award ceremony for the second award I mentioned, right?
Yes, I did for the Thriller Fest Award, and that was an incredible experience. And if there's anybody out here watching who is an aspiring author, I definitely recommend go to a writing festival. Do it before you start querying because you will get some fabulous tips and tricks, and you might actually meet your agent. That's what happened to me. So definitely think about that. But yeah, Thriller Fest in New York, fabulous. And everybody treats everybody as if everybody is already a famous author. Even if you're just there as a reader, the famous people will treat you as if you are one of them. And it is fantastic. It was absolutely amazing.
That's awesome. I'm adding that to my bucket list. Maybe next year we can meet up there together.
That would be fantastic because I can't go this year, but I was thinking about going next year.
Okay, let's put it on our bucket list and try to make it happen.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
that said, do you want to tell people a little about your publishing journey?
Yes, sure, I could do that. So I am a traditionally published author. I am published with HarperCollins, and but I did not take a traditional path to traditional publishing. I finished my book in 2019. I started querying at the beginning of 2020, so it was the beginning of the pandemic. Which anybody out there who has been in the querying trenches for a few years knows that that was the absolute worst time to be querying a novel because everybody was in a panic, everybody was in a disarray, and agents were just inundated with books because people were at home and everybody was writing. So I queried, I had some interest, but nothing that was ever like, you know, nothing that ever went to signing with an agent. And then I found a few of the big five publishers who had smaller imprints, digital first imprints, that were accepting submissions from unagented authors. And I thought, you know what? Why not? I'll just throw it out there. If they say no, I'll go back to the drawing board, rewrite my book, write another book. And I sent out to four of those big five publishers, and two of them were interested. And I went to, the meetings with both two, decided to go with HarperCollins, and that's how my first two books were published. And then it wasn't until I was nominated for that award, and then I went to Thriller Fest in New York for the award, where I met the woman who would become my agent, and I signed with her a few months after the award ceremony, and now my third book is coming out in September.
That's so exciting.
Yeah. So traditional
And
publishing, the non-traditional way.
and just in case anyone wants to pick your books up, so you've got Where Ravens Roost in the background, Last One Alive. I'm also going to show
Yeah. That's the
Karen's
new cover for Where Ravens Roost. Yep. It's available in ebook, paperbook, and audiobook. Same with Last One Alive. And the audiobook is fantastic. I have a great narrator on these two books. I mean, he does the voices better than I did them in my head. So if you like audiobooks, I have to recommend
I
mine.
really enjoyed him.
Yeah.
He's got a
He's fantastic.
fantastic voice.
Yeah, and he actually, if you're a fandom person, he does radio shows for Doctor Who. So if you recognize the voice, that's probably why.
Which is such an exciting connection for a geeky person like
For me,
yourself.
as soon as I found out, I was like, oh, yes, yes, he would be perfect.
Mhm.
Because that's something we can talk about later, actually, about the differences between Fred Pub and Self Pub when it comes to audiobooks, on whether or not you get a say in who the narrator is.
Very true.
Yeah.
We will definitely get to that. That's gonna tie into some stuff I have to promote. First, I want to say hello to one of our viewers. Carl Witzman says, "Yay! Hi, Carl. I love
Oh,
you." Carl's one of my good friends who also is a very talented author. He's written a few thrillers himself, and I adore Carl. He's just the best. Like so. So I will talk about my publishing journey a little
yeah.
bit. Very different from yours. Also non-traditional. So
Sorry.
basically, when I first started writing was, oh gosh, like I want to say 14 years ago, 15 years ago, I decided to write a superhero novel, which is not a genre that you find in traditional publishing, really. The superheroes you see in the comics, superheroes are mostly a comic genre, especially back then, because this was before Iron Man, the movie came
Yeah, I
out.
was gonna
This
say
was
that's definitely before Iron Man. Yeah.
yeah, so I was but I really looked around for I did my homework. I followed agent blogs, I went to writing forums. I just looked into all the advice I could get on getting published because when I first started writing the story, I was putting pieces of it online and getting really good feedback from people saying, "Hey, you really should look into publishing this," which thank you to those people who gave me that early feedback. That was wonderful. Um, I really appreciated that support. But so, and I did feel really strongly about my story. I wanted to get it out there. I have friends and family members who were like, "Hey, I would love to hold your book in my hands. I would love to be able to read it." So I started looking into what it would take to get there. And first of all, if you've ever looked into the querying process, it's a little intimidating.
And when she says a little, she means a lot.
I mean, it basically you're told that most of the time your book is going to end up in the slush pile. Well, first of all, you're not going to be sending your book. You have to write a one-page letter that sells your book, and that's hard. But before that, you need to find the right agents to even send your book to, and you need to find agents that are pretty much representing books that are in your genre, that are similar enough to what you've written,
Yeah.
but obviously you're not going to be like, I've written the next Twilight, and then go
Yeah.
to Stephanie Meyer's agent because that's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, and the hard
But
thing
my
too is you don't
problem,
want it to be too similar, because if it's too similar, they're just gonna tell you, "Well, I already have an author doing that,"
Mhm.
which I ran into as
It's
well.
a delicate. Oh, jeez. Yeah, it's a delicate balance,
It is.
and in my case, uh, superhero novels, not really a thing. I found one that was traditionally published, and I did write to the author, and I was like, "Hey, who's your agent?" Because you miss all the shots you don't take. The author was very kind, and he did get back to me and told me who his agent was, and he was like, "Well, so this is my agent, but he doesn't really normally represent fiction. It's just." But you know what? So it wasn't even a genre. Like it fell under urban fantasy, but it's not really what you think of when
Yeah.
you think of urban fantasy. So I still went through the querying process, but eventually I kind of realized that so this is not a genre that's traditional publishing friendly. And I was like, and at the time, self-publishing was becoming a lot more accessible. So I was like, I don't need to make a full career of this. I just want to get a book that I can hold in my hands. So I'm just going to do it. And if I just get copies to have my friends and family have them, that's cool. And so then I did that. And then, right about the time that I finally got the book ready to go, the Marvel universe hit in a
Yeah.
big way. And then I got a little discouraged because I'm like, well, who wants to read about superheroes when you've got this just glut of superheroes? So then it took me, between that and having kids, it took me like 12 years to finish the second book because I
It's I
didn't
mean, it's a
have
long
a
process,
deadline.
and I get a lot of questions from people, especially on Instagram about, like, about self-publishing and, why didn't I do it and would I do it? And I self-publishing is so much work. If you wanna do self-publish I mean, I guess there's 2 ways to look at it. You could look at it kind of like, "Well, I just want a book to hold in my hands, and I can have it, it's out there, friends and family can get it." But if you wanted to make it as a career, the people that are self-publishing and trying to make a career out of it, or actually making a career out of it, that is that is a job, and actually, it's not even 1 job, it's like 15 jobs. It's so much work, and I can't even stress enough how amazed I am by anybody who self-publishes, even if it's just because they want 1 book on their shelf. It's so much work, and I am way too lazy.
It's wild. Yeah, and so I will show off my books a little bit. So this is Scorcher.
I love that cover. I think it's beautiful.
My artist nailed the cover. I went on DeviantArt and searched for um re like redhead faces or something, and found an artist that had something similar, and then I sent her a message and asked her if I could commission her. And so Daphne Salazar is my artist, and we've kept in touch all these years. So she did make my second cover,
Yeah,
and my gosh, she just knocked it out of the park. Like
yeah.
I had a,
I like
I
I
had
like
a
Carl's
vision.
comment here about it's difficult if your genre is a little different from what traditional publishers handle, and that is really hard. That is really true, and it's really hard because traditional publishers, um, their genres can change very quickly,
Mhm.
or they can stay the same for a very, very long time. So if you're kind of writing something that's in that niche and you miss the boat, like YA dystopia, for example, or vampires, although that vampires are coming back. So anybody who's watching, vampires are coming back.
Get on
But yeah,
that quickly.
it's really hard to kind of guess. A lot of people try to guess what is the traditional industry going to go into, and then try to write their book around that. Not sure that I would recommend it, but I think it's good to keep an eye on what is. Write what you want to write, but at the same time, keeping an eye out of what is kind of what's being picked up is not a bad idea.
I agree. Also, Alfred's animation page says hello there.
I love
Hello.
Alfred. Alfred is fantastic. He's one of my favorite
Oh,
artists on Instagram and TikTok. And if you love animation, you should totally follow him because he is so talented.
I'm gonna need to follow him.
He's really cool. He's funny too.
And then Carl says he had much better luck with queries to magazines than book publishers, which makes sense. Like,
Well, I think magazines, because you're usually looking at shorter pieces, they have
mhm.
a little bit more, mobility in the types of books or types of stories that they can pick up, and they're not investing usually in really 2,500 books being printed or something. Um, so magazines are a great place to start. I started with short stories in magazines as well. I was not super
It's
successful. I got picked up by a few, but I was not super successful at the really good magazines because I'm not a very good literary writer. But I would start at magazines if you're new. Just try it.
also writing a short story is not like an easier form of writing a
No,
novel. Writing a short story is an art form all on its
it
own. I
really
have
is.
to say that. Like
Yeah, 100%.
anyone who's like, "Oh, I'll just write a short story and submit it to some magazines." Like it's a whole
It's
different
hard because it
structure.
has to be compact, but it has to pull you in.
Mhm.
But short
Mhm.
stories that are often printed in magazines, there's usually like a nuance to them, um, that you don't see in novels because novels have 350 pages to draw you in, and a short story has maybe 5 or 5,000
You have
words.
time to breathe, time to
Yeah.
develop the characters and the plot. The short story just packs that bang. I do not have the skill to write short stories.
I love
I
short
wish I
stories.
did.
Actually, I love writing short stories,
I do too.
and I personally think I'm better at them than novels, but they're hard to sell in the traditional publishing world unless you are a big name. Getting a compilation of short stories, like ignore all of these on the shelf because they're big names.
Uh-huh.
um, but yeah, but that would be my dream. I'd love to have that. That'd be cool.
Hey, maybe there's a self-publishing compilation in your future.
That's always possible. That's always possible. Yeah. Actually, I have met a few traditionally published authors. You can find them pretty easily, that do go the hybrid route, that do both because traditional publishing is so kind of stringent in what it takes because it's looking at mass market, it's a big money making mass market business. A lot of writers who are traditionally published that also write really weird or niche or more graphic things, they go the self-publishing route, and I've seen a few of them do pretty well. Just slap another pen name on there and good to go.
Yep. Yep. And so one of the things we want to talk about was, which you kind of touched on it, some people look down on self-publishing. I actually had a former friend who was looking into getting, or he had some books that he wanted to get published. And there's nothing wrong with having traditional publishing as your goal. Nothing wrong with it. But he was getting to a point where he was like, well, I know I could just go the self-publishing route, but that feels like the easy way out. I was like, excuse me?
It is absolutely not the easy way out. It is absolutely not the easy way out. Everybody I know who self-publishes does 150% more work than I do and probably makes
I
more
mean,
money.
I'm not gonna say that. Like both ways are real publishing.
Yeah, they are. They
Um,
both are. Yeah. That kind of bias, I think it comes from the fact that self-publishing wasn't really a thing until, quite recently.
yep.
And so it was kind of like a badge of honor if you got picked up by a traditional publisher, back in the olden days when you sent your whole manuscript in by mail and you just waited for somebody to call you back. Um, but self-publishing is absolutely real publishing. And I mean, as you can see, some self-published books get picked up by traditional publishers just because they do so well. Because self-publishing, you know, that you can offer something to the reader that you might not be able to offer through a traditional publisher. And I think there is definitely a readership for self-published books. And I think there always will be. Just like there
Yes.
will always be readers for fan fiction and things like that.
And absolutely there's not the same kind of gatekeeping that there is in the traditional publishing world. So that's part of the reason. However, there's also not the same kind of gatekeeping as in the traditional publishing world. It's a double-edged
Ooh.
sword. Like, but the fact that someone did the work to make sure their book was edited, make sure it was formatted, even oh my gosh, the horror stories I could tell you about formatting for the different
Yeah, I can
there were
imagine.
yeah,
Because if
yeah,
you're a self-publisher, you have to wear all the hats. You have to be the editor,
mhm,
unless you hire an
mhm.
editor. You have to be the marketer, the publicist, the formatter, the proofreader, everything. Um, Here's a good question
That
here. Has
oh, yes,
self-publishing replaced the mid-list?
oh, and this is from Oh Dears, which is hi, Becky.
Hi, Becky.
Um,
Throwing out those hard questions.
that is a good question. I feel like it hasn't. I feel like there's still a mid-list in traditional publishing. What do you think?
I I definitely think there definitely still is a mid-list in traditional publishing. Um, you can see that just by, you know, what's available in the market. But I do think that self-publishing has pushed itself up from the bottom, what they call the bottom tier of publishing, um, into kind of a category that stands very close to the mid list. And this is, of course, talking about people who are self-publishing and putting out, like, for example, romance authors who self-publish and put out 8, 9, 10 books a year, um, on a very strict schedule. and do very well and hit the USA Today bestseller list all the time. I think that is definitely, I wouldn't say taking over the mid list, but it's definitely inching in on what we consider the mid list, because I would say that some of those books are doing better than traditional publishing's mid list, or just as well as the mid list is doing. So
Yeah, which is, I feel like, bring it on, because also one thing that self-publishing allows is it allows for more diverse voices than traditional publishing has in the past. Traditional publishing is starting to change, but
they're
the
trying.
self-publish trying, but self-publishing allows for more LGBTQ content. It allows for um, writers of color
Yeah.
to speak to their experiences more. Traditional publishing still does have a less diverse offering,
Yeah, and I
for
think the thing that's
sure.
unfortunate is that when a traditional publisher does pick up, we'll just call it a minority writer, for example, they'll push them really hard. It'll become one of their, lead titles, because they're trying to break into that group of readers, that readership, which is great. Except it'll just be that one author or that one book, when there are, thousands and thousands of books that are still sitting in the slush piles, um, by authors like that could be, brought into the traditional realm. So yeah, I think you're right. I think the self-publishing really does help those authors reach a
And
wider
they'll
audience.
also sometimes pigeonhole those works. So it'll be put into Black fiction instead of just science fiction,
Yeah.
just because it was written by a Black author, or LGBTQ fiction instead of, again, science fiction, just because it has some LGBTQ relationships or whatever. And
Mhm.
this is kind of related, but so Dave Mattingly is weighing in, and he says weird fiction is the best fiction. Dave Mattingly is one of my friends who is one of the most interesting people I've ever met. He's worn so many hats for jobs. Dave, I did not know that you ran a small press publishing company. He says self-publishing is a great way to go to. Yeah, he's had some really interesting jobs.
I agree too.
So,
I like weird fiction. I like weird fiction.
weird fiction is
I
great.
was just recently introduced to, I'm not even sure, I can't remember what the genre is. It's a niche. It's like horror westerns. And it's
That,
and
that sounds
they
amazing.
have the most wild covers ever. And honestly, I bought a few just because the covers were so insane, but they look like old, like, 70s pulp novels, and they're fantastic. So, weird fiction, I definitely am into that.
I feel like you should judge a book by its cover, okay? Like, I know the saying goes against it, but that saying is so wrong. Like, the cover is
It
everything.
is, but you know
Okay?
what? We all do it. Even if people say they don't do it, they do it. They judge by the cover. I mean, I don't know, my publisher judges books by the cover. They really do.
That-
They basically, what they do is, like, they'll take a bunch of books, they'll slap a cover on it, they'll put it on a shelf, they'll have people walk by it and see which ones kind of catch their eye, and then that's how they decide, "Oh, well, people are interested in purple covers now," or they're interested
Yeah.
in the covers with a person's face or a girl running through the woods, or, that's how you get these trends. So
My book ended up on oh, someone's list of most orange book covers. Thanks. I'll take it. Like,
but
I'll be on any
how
book
does it
list.
work then for in self-publishing, if you when you go to do, because you have to either make the cover yourself or you have to find a cover artist for it. So how is that,
Yeah.
can I ask, is that an expensive process if you hire somebody? Can it be as expensive
So,
as you want it to be?
I, yeah, basically, it can be really expensive. I got really lucky because my artist and I came to an agreement that was not cost prohibitive. And a lot of times, if you know creative people, you can trade. So, like, I'll do something for you, you'll do something for me. Another option, if you're good with graphic design, is you can put the cover together as long as you're very careful about the images you use, because there are some images that are they're royalty free and available for commercial use. But you have to be really careful about that because some people think you can just Google, and
Oh, yeah.
don't do that.
Don't
Don't
just
just
Google.
Google and use the first image that comes up. That is a way to get a lawsuit. But hiring an artist, there are a lot of artists that, you know, will work for a reasonable rate. And when I say reasonable, I mean you're paying them for their time and their experience, and do not underpay your artists for sure. But it you're not gonna like go broke, but you're gonna pay for the
Yeah.
experience. And in my case, I did not go broke getting my cover artist to make this beautiful art, but I definitely, I it was a good deal, I
Yeah.
think.
I
And
mean, that's one of the first questions people ask me is, do you have any say in the cover, as a traditionally published author? And it's interesting. The short answer is no, not really. Unless you're like Stephen King or something, and of course, I'm sure he has say in the cover. Um, but you do have some say. For example, for my first book, they I was kind of a guinea pig for my publisher. They published thrillers and they published crime novels, but they'd never published anything that was kind of in the Scandinavian noir genre. So they asked me
very
ahead of time.
cool.
They said, "What kinds of covers in the Scandinavian noir genre do you like?" And I sent them a list of like 8 books that had covers that I really liked. And I also said, it's very common for them to be red, white, blue, black covers.
Oh,
So, do I have a
they
say?
nailed it.
Well, they did, and then they changed it. But so that's the thing is so I did get a say. They tried to my publisher tries to pick the cover, they try to pick a scene from the book. So this is actually a scene that's in the book. Um,
Mhm.
and then they try to incorporate that into the cover. So and then when they made the first cover, they sent it to me and they said, "What do you like? What do you not like? Do you like the font? Do you like the figure?" And um, I said a
Like
few
that.
things that weren't working for me, like the character was missing hands in the first picture, like it was a mistake, and then somebody
Oh,
didn't
no.
notice, and so I was like, "Where's his hands?" So they went back in and they put hands they put hands on him, so that was good. But then, the book wasn't doing really well when it first came out, and so they decided to change the cover, and that's how you got the cover with the barn on it, which I don't actually have in paperback copy. But then they made the sequel to kind of match the new cover of the first one.
Which makes sense. So did you notice an uptick in sales when they changed the cover?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
Yes. And it was kind of like, when if you look closely at different genres in the traditional publishing world, you'll notice trends. Like if you read crime novels and you look at the crime novel section, you'll notice that all crime novels either have a person walking someplace, or it's a building looking suspicious, or it's a woman's face, probably the victim in the book. Those are like the
Mhm.
typical, tropey book covers in traditional publishing for crime. So they were trying to go with the figure first, didn't do well, so then they jumped down to the building cover instead, which did better. And when you have a series, they want them all to look the same. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. So you have a say, you don't have a say. My third book, actually 2 weeks ago, they sent me some book covers of books that had just come out in the last year that they wanted to use as inspiration for my new book cover. And then they kind of asked me, which of these 6 covers do you like? Yes,
Oh,
and why or why not? So I said, well, I really like these 2 because of this. I don't like these 4 because of this. And I haven't seen the new cover yet, but I suspect that they will have taken that into account because they don't want the author to be upset, but they also want the book to
right.
sell. So at the end of the day, if they think your idea won't sell, they won't use it.
So basically they want you to get out of your own way.
Yeah. They want you to be happy, and you will be happy. Um, but they also want to sell books because it's a business. So,
I mean, that makes sense.
I mean,
And you'll be more
personally,
happy
I like this
getting
cover better than the second one because I like that it has the birds. I like that it has the snow.
it's beautiful.
But the second one, it sells better, so I guess I like that one too.
I mean, you like the money in the bank, right?
Yeah, I mean, not that it's much, but it's good. It's okay.
Yeah. So, speaking of your third book, I know you can't say too much, but what can you share?
So sadly, I can't share the cover because I haven't seen it yet, and I can't share the title even though I know it, because that's a surprise my publisher wants to. That's the one thing about traditional publishing that can be really frustrating is there's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of waiting, and since you're not in charge of everything, you can't choose the dates on your own. And they pick dates for when they're going to do book cover releases, and it's like it's like dropping Marvel trailers. They make a thing out of it. So but what I
Yeah, that
can
makes
say
sense.
is that it's a standalone suspense thriller. It takes place in Ohio, in the United States, and it is about a young woman whose sister was murdered by her boyfriend when they were in high school. And now it
Oh.
is 15 years later, and the boyfriend who is on death row is coming up on his execution, and the woman finds evidence that maybe he did not commit the crime. Dun dun dun.
Ooh,
So it is a
intriguing.
dual timeline thriller where you see scenes from her perspective in the past and scenes in the present, and it's a race against time to find out who did it.
I
And it's
like
out in
it.
September, and I can't tell you the book, but if you look up my name on Amazon, you can pre-order it, but it just says book 3 at the
Yes.
moment. But I think in a couple of weeks there will be a title and a cover up there, so and it's a cool name, the title,
I'm
I
so
would say.
excited.
I wish I could share it because 'cause it'd be easier to talk about, but
That's
definitely
okay.
it's a
We
very different book from my first 2, and that's something else we can talk about is how much creative control you have, in what you're gonna do when you sign on with a publisher.
Yeah,
Um,
let's talk about
but
that.
yeah.
Go for it.
Oh, okay. So the funny thing about well, not funny thing. So when you're signed onto a publishing contract, you're kind of locked in, not 100% locked in, but I published these 2 books with my publisher. My publisher really enjoyed working with me. I enjoyed working with them as well. Um, but these books weren't performing. They weren't hitting the numbers that they wanted to hit. And it was for multiple reasons. So they came to me and they said, we would like you to offer us some more books because we like working with you. But do you have something that's a standalone, um,
Hmm,
still in the thriller genre, but we would like it to be in an English speaking country with a female protagonist? So that's what they came to me with. They said, we want standalone, female protagonist, English speaking country. The rest is on you.
interesting.
Yeah. Because anybody who's read these books, set in Sweden, male protagonist. What was the other one? Yeah, still a thriller, but not. But it's series. So they want standalone. This is series. So I said, okay. When thought about it, came up with some ideas. They always ask you for 2 ideas. They want, the first book and then a potential second book. Um, the first book idea that I came up with, they were like, yes, we love that. We want that.
Huh.
What's your second book going to be? I sent them an idea. No, we don't want that. Okay, back to the
Hmm.
drawing board. Sent them another idea. Yeah, no, that's not gonna work.
Oh.
Uh, sent them a third idea. This is close. This is close. Um, fourth idea, yes, we like that. We like that. The funny thing is too, because when you're publishing standalones with a traditional publisher, they want them to be similar. They want them to be able to sit side by side, so that if a reader likes your first one, then they're more likely to pick up your second one.
Makes
So it's
sense.
not like you can't just go with them and say, okay, I'm writing a psychological thriller, and then also send them a sci-fi. They won't do that. I
That makes sense.
kind of tried to do something like that. Not exactly. It was like a supernatural thriller kind of thing. Um,
Oh, that would have been fun.
well, it's the funny thing. I still have the idea. I can still write the book, for the future. but yeah, so this is what they were looking for. So, the story, but then you still have the option to say yes or no. Of course, it's scary to say no
Right.
to a publisher. But yeah, so you have a say. I mean, you always have a say, but a lot of times publishers know what they're looking for and know what they can sell well. Like they look at their own, list and they say, okay, we're selling this kind of book really well right now. And if any of
Yeah.
if our authors can write those kinds of books, we can guarantee that we can sell more copies than we could on their last book.
Which is nice that they have done that marketing research for you. So you still, creativity wise, we kind of touched on this, but you don't want to just write to what you think you can sell. You still need to be able to write something that you feel passionate about. But
Yeah, because you
it's
have to
nice that
still write it. Yeah. And you have to write on
yeah.
deadline. So if you don't like it, then it can be a big struggle
Mhm.
to do it. My second book was on a very short deadline. Very short
Oh,
deadline.
I
Um,
remember you were so stressed.
uh, I had 6 months.
Sorry.
I had 6 months basically to write it, but the first 2 months I was still editing the first book, and
Oh
I
my gosh.
hadn't figured out how to balance drafting a new novel while editing another one at the same time. So that was a very quick turnaround, in the middle of the pandemic, which I do not recommend. But it's
I don't
also a good.
recommend doing anything in the middle of the pandemic.
No, that's true. Just sit on the couch. Uh,
It's
yeah, but I mean, that's
terrible.
something to, like, if you're going into traditional publishing and you end up in a situation like I was, where you don't have an agent, um, and you see a contract and you're not sure if you can make that deadline, tell them that. I'm sure that if I had said I don't think I can make that deadline, they probably would have given me longer. Um, but they had a very specific publishing routine, like schedule for series, and the
Yeah,
people who write series for them, they're knocking out 2 or 3 books a year,
it's a
which is
lot.
which you see a lot in digital first publishing, not so much in
Makes sense.
the bigger, hardback books, but yeah, I mean, that was hard deadline for me. But it did help me learn how to write faster, so.
Which is a great lesson. And I'm gonna take some time to catch up on our comments.
Okay.
So, we have Dave says some of his favorite sci-fi came from the 70s. The 70s was just such a great era for sci-fi.
It was really prolific.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was definitely a prolific time for sci-fi.
I feel like science was developing very fast and people were imagining what could be in the future. And I love this is a whole tangent, but I love to track how the sci-fi of the 70s shaped the science of
Yeah.
today. I could do a whole
That's
episode
a podcast
or
in its own,
special
yeah.
on that. I will spare you all for now. So Alfred's animation page says you said vampire genres are trending.
Yeah,
Are
they're
there
coming
any
back.
other genres trending at the moment?
So vampires are coming back, and they're coming back pretty strong in YA. I'm not sure that if you haven't already sent one in yet, I'm not sure if it's too late because the books aren't out yet. But basically, traditional
Yeah.
publishing, even though it seems very slow because it is very slow, it's also in the background. It's kind of ahead of itself. So
Mhm.
vampires are trending. In the thriller books, airplane thrillers are back, like
Mhm.
thrillers that are set on airplanes, which are terrifying. I read one. I have one sitting here. It's fabulous, but it's horrifying. So airplane thrillers, isolated, like secluded location thrillers, like we're all trapped in a cabin in the woods and we're snowed in. There were like 3 that came out last year that all hit the New York Times bestseller list. Um,
I wonder where
and
those ideas came from.
yeah, basically any retelling of Agatha Christie in a modern way is doing really well. And actually last year or this year, there's like 3 different retellings of Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock coming out.
Interesting.
So those are kind of trending. Urban fantasy is also getting kind of a push in certain markets too.
I feel like the D&D the renewed love for D&D is probably driving
Yeah,
him
yeah,
somewhat.
it could be. Yeah, it could be. But
100%.
yeah, like isolation thrillers are just like the thing right now.
I mean, I can see why. We just went
'Cause we're all
through our own
isolated.
isolation as a society, so we cope with fiction. Like, it's a thing. So Dave Mattingly said when he was publishing several dozen books a year, he bought an unlimited professional license with a stock photo provider, which yes, that's exactly if you want to do lots of covers, that's what I recommend. You can also commission someone to graphic design your cover who may have that license. Um, I'm not gonna say a graphic designer is gonna be cheaper than an artist. It all depends.
It kind of depends on what kind of I imagine it depends on what you're looking for too
Mhm.
for your book. Which style is gonna be the best for you, especially if you're looking to if for self-publishing, but you're also looking to compete against traditionally published books, to find an artist who can kind of go in the same style as traditionally published books to kind of maybe look like you're already their competition.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, the more professional your cover looks, the better off you are, and you definitely a lot of times you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
But if you have talented friends, there's a lot of times when you can do trades. Pay your friends, though, or do a fair trade. Like, do not expect your friend to work for free, ever. Sorry. I'm okay. So Dave says, but he was an artist before he switched to science and tech, and his artistic skills still work fine for cover composition. Like I said, Dave has had a lot of interesting jobs.
He
He was
does
a
sound
rocket
like it. I'm
scientist.
curious.
He worked for the government.
Oh,
Apparently, he ran a small
cool
press. He's just one of the coolest people I know, and I know a lot of cool people, yourself included, Karen.
thing.
So
Oh,
Jerry said away. Is there any talking about a movie for Where Ravens Roost? So,
so I'm going to preface this by saying that in the traditional publishing world, we don't talk about these things until they're set in stone. um, that's not funny. I keep saying everything is funny. Everything is funny.
everything is funny.
There has been interest. Nothing has been signed. I'll leave it there. But
Ooh,
that's
that's
a
a
funny thing
very
about
cinematic story.
that's the funny thing about traditional publishing, or I mean, I guess it probably works the same with self-publishing. If a self-published book gets, you know, interest from the film or TV industry. Basically, if you have an agent, they're usually out there trying to find a production company that would be willing to pick it up. If you don't have an agent, like I didn't for my first two books, um, they go to your publisher and then your publisher sends them to you. Or if you're self-published, they go directly to you and they hop in your emails and they're basically like, hey, I'm so and so. You send them a copy of your book and you basically wait. Um, so it's like it's a waiting game, but nothing officially right now. But who knows?
And
I'm
that is one thing I
optimistic
will
for
say.
something one day. I've already
Hope so.
fan cast like the whole book to so I can recommend people.
Yes. And I will say having an agent, from what I've heard, would make that process a lot easier because negotiating with Hollywood would be really stressful to do on your own. So,
Well, I mean, even negotiations aside, if you have an agent, they have the connections. They already know the people. I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation where my agent is formerly a screenwriter. So she already has connections in that
that's so cool.
industry. And most literary agents are similar in a sense. They have the connections already. They know who might be interested and who wouldn't be, and they have no problem reaching out and cold calling people because that's what they're expected to do and that's what they do. So
Which is excellent.
and
I don't have to grieve about that.
to do it on your own. I will say
Mhm.
that even though I'm really grateful for being able to do it on my own for my first two books, it's really hard because you have to have a lot of self-confidence and you have to be able to stand up for yourself and in a professional way, which I think is very intimidating. So the nice thing about having an agent is you can kind of stand behind them. They'll go to bat for you basically. But if you do it the way I did it the first time around, prepare yourself and just stick to your guns essentially, and don't give anybody your film rights. I'm going to say this again. If your publisher asks for the film rights, say no. They're yours. Keep them so that you can get 100% of the profits later.
I like that advice. And we're kind of jumping around on our
All right, let's get back to our schedule.
No, I like it. The conversation is happening naturally. I just want to make sure we don't miss anything because we had some good stuff. So let's see. So we kind of touched on cost for the author for self-publishing versus traditional publishing, but we didn't touch on everything. So, what were your costs like?
So this is a weird question. And then first I'll say the important part for anybody out there who wants to be an author, who wants to be a traditionally published author. It should not cost you anything to get published.
Yep.
It should not cost you anything to get an agent. It should not cost you anything to get a publishing deal. So if an agent tells you to pay them directly, or if a publisher tells you to pay them directly, do your research. It could be a scam. Unless it's a hybrid publisher, that's a different thing. But if somebody's asking you for money to publish your book, no, because all money should go directly to the author. That's how traditional publishing works. So I sign a contract, they publish my book, they pay for everything, and then I either get an advance if I've signed a contract that has an advance, or I get royalty statements as an author if I've signed a contract that gets royalty statements. The only time where an author might have to pay money is if you want to do extra marketing on your own. And then that cost is basically whatever you're willing to shell out for the publishing that your publisher isn't already doing for you. But it's always a good idea to ask your publisher what they're doing so that you don't do the same thing.
Yep.
So like if you want to make bookmarks for yourself at the cost of, I don't know, $200 for 500 bookmarks, then you can. If you want to hire a publicist outside of your publisher's publicist to do extra public relations for you, you can do that, and that you can spend up to as much money as you want. But the actual act of getting published or getting an agent should cost you nothing.
Yep.
Zero. My camera's
Because there
weird.
are so many scam.
Yeah, there are a
They
lot.
call them vanity. They call them vanity presses,
Yeah.
but they're skeezy.
Yeah. And I actually, on a weekly basis, I get people in my DMs on Instagram saying, hey, this publisher is interested in my book. My book is 45,000 words. It's an adult thriller, but they want me to pay so much money. And I'm like, let me stop you there. If they are a legitimate publisher, they're not going to publish an adult thriller at 45,000 words, and they're not going to ask you to pay for it. So yeah, it's probably a vanity press.
Yep.
So it's definitely something you have to be very careful.
Yeah, and that's where having author friends or even asking authors you admire, like Karin, or
if you're
like myself,
just jump in my DMs. Everybody else does.
Please ask because, so obviously self-publishing costs more money.
Yeah.
You definitely pay for an editor.
Yeah.
I do not edit yourself. Like, edit yourself first and then send to an editor. I'm very lucky that my best friend is an editor, but I pay her. Like I said, pay your friends what they're worth.
I would even recommend that to, if you are a new writer and you even want to do traditional publishing and you know that you are not good at editing and you don't have somebody who can edit, I would definitely consider finding a developmental editor at the very least who can kind of go through your book before you query it. I mean, unless you have a team of beta readers or you did an English program at a university and you have some college buddies who are, good at seeing details. Like, even if you're going the traditional publishing route, it doesn't hurt to have an extra set of eyes. Just make sure you're hiring somebody who's legitimate and has experience in developmental editing for the type of book you've written.
Because you pretty much, wouldn't you say you want to, if you get your query accepted, you want to be sending in a book that's pretty close to finished. Like, yes, they will edit it, but
Yeah.
you want to send in a book that's the best work you can present to them.
It needs to be as good as you can get it. And when I say, it's good is kind of like a relative term. The story has to be good, the character arc has to be good, the dialogue has to be there. But almost more importantly, your spelling and your grammar has to be perfect, because spelling and grammar are like the first thing to turn off anybody from reading your story. And if your
Really?
first page is riddled with spelling errors, an
Shows you
agent's
didn't
just gonna
care.
throw it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my other cost, the cover,
Yeah.
which, that can be, you can be paying anywhere from, like, if you do it yourself, that could be free. You could be paying for the image, or you could pay an artist anywhere from 50 up to like $1,000. That is not me exaggerating. Sometimes more,
Yeah.
depending on the artist.
Well, I know that
Like,
some people who self-publish and they like marketing, eh, you could go into tens of thousands if you wanted to.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you go directly through like the Amazon and the Barnes and Noble, their self-publishing press, that's free. But then that's extra work. So what I discovered this time around was Ingram Spark, which is not a vanity press, but it's
No.
$50 to go through Ingram Spark, and then the formatting tool is better, and then Ingram Spark distributes to everywhere, and it gives bookstores the chance to purchase your book, as opposed to there's just other extra steps to take if you're like piecemealing it out through Amazon and
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble. So now my books are going to be housed at Ingram Spark's site, and it's, to me, it's worth the $50. But if you're just getting started out and you just want to have your book available online and like test the waters, you can go through Amazon, or Lulu is another one that's
Mhm.
free, especially if you don't like Amazon. I'm not going to say I don't like Amazon. Amazon is where I get most of my sales, and I appreciate Amazon for that. Um, Other than that, then, like you said, just like with traditional published authors, marketing can be as much or as little as you want to spend. In the past, I have not really spent like any money on marketing. I spent some money doing my recent Indiegogo campaign on Facebook ads, which were kind of a mixed bag. But other than that, it just was time. It's time.
Yeah.
Doing social media,
I mean,
doing
yeah,
podcasts,
social media,
building
that's a
up a
good one too.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, that kind of leads into another question we
Yeah,
have.
somebody asked me, you know, do you have to have social media to be traditionally published? Um, you don't have to be on social media to get picked up. I'll say that. To get picked up by an agent, for example, you don't have to have social media. But my contract with my publisher says I have to have social media. Like, it's actually in my
Wow.
contract that I have to have a social media platform that I am active on, that I'm actively able to market my books, for example. Um, and most publishers will say that they want their authors to have at least one social media that they can direct people to. I mean, they even have my Twitter on the back of my book.
That's wild.
Twitter is not the one I'm most active on, so but my publisher is digital first. So digital marketing is a huge thing. So they want you to have a digital presence. And and they will look at your social medias before they sign you. Same with agents. So if you have anything suspicious or not unprofessional on your social medias, remove it or make a new social media profile before you query agents. But yeah, they expect you to have something because they want to tag you in things. And they want you to be available so, you can be followed by your readers, because your readers will want to follow you and they want to know about your life and they want to know what you're working on. So you don't have to
Yeah.
have one to get picked up, but they're going to ask you to have something eventually. Just pick the one that you like the most and stick with it.
Yeah, social media is a necessary evil sometimes,
It
but
is.
it's a great way to connect with your readers and potential readers. It's a great way to get the word out. People do not just buy books because there's so many books out there.
There are.
People buy
Well, and
personalities.
it's not like I don't want to say the olden days, but it's not like the days before social media when you would sign on to a publisher, they would give you a big book tour, they would send you all over the country, to bookstores, and you would sign books. They just don't do that anymore. A lot of the book tours that you see, even with traditionally published authors, they're arranging that themselves, and it's usually with their local bookstores, or they're really, really big authors that they know that are gonna drag in crowds. Um, so
And
you
to
just
be
don't get that
honest,
same thing anymore. So if you don't have a social media and you're not, you know, reachable, or it's harder for them to get the word out about you. And I think readers, they like to know a little bit about their authors that they're reading. They think, I have a lot of people that follow me just because they like my cat and they bought my books because I put my cat in my books. I mean,
I
they
love
follow
that.
me, they message me like, they're like, "Will you please post another picture of your cat?" And then I just take a picture of him with my book and put it on the social media. So that's actually, if people, people, it's kind of like in any industry, if you're likable and approachable, and you know, then people will find you.
Yeah, which honestly, I'm kind of a fan of
My cat.
niceness winning out. Like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I
Well, and honestly too, it makes you easier to market if you're with a traditional publisher. And if you're self-publishing, I have to imagine it makes you easier to market as well.
yeah, I took that big long break, and when I got back into it and got book 2 out, I was like, "Well, I've already been doing podcasting and building my audience. It's really so much easier to market things
Well, I
now
think
that
too,
I have."
if you're self-published, you have to have a social media presence. Otherwise, nobody's gonna find you. I mean, you have to,
Yeah.
right? And I think actually it's funny because the I follow a lot of self-published authors on YouTube, and they have some of the best, like, channels out there, and they're
Yep,
informative, and I learn stuff from them as well. So, I mean, if you wanna be a self-published author, just throw yourself in the deep end, I guess, and start a podcast, start a YouTube channel.
exactly, exactly, and Keely has a great question. So,
Right.
she says, "How do you map out how you want your story to go?" She has an overall idea, but she's having such a hard time just starting and figuring out how to lay out. So, Karen, do you wanna answer this first, or do you want me to go first?
I just talked a lot, you go first.
Okay,
My answer is
so
confusing.
I actually have a few pieces of advice for this. So,
Okay.
my stories are incredibly character driven. So, whenever I get stuck on a plot point, I will pull up my characters and go, okay, have I done a character questionnaire sheet recently on this character? And then I'll pull up one of those like 50 question questionnaires and start answering those. And usually, once the questionnaires ask about like character histories and stuff. And as I'm filling those out, those usually give me ideas of like, okay, this is the character's history, and then it kind of reveals things that I want to work into the story in some way. But I also sometimes I'll just sit down and start writing in the middle. Like I'll figure out a scene that I want to write to, and then I'll back up. But I also have this advice that I printed out after. I'm going to name drop here, but if you're not a comic fan, you're not going to know. That sounded hipsterish. I'm sorry. So I got the really exciting opportunity to interview one of my favorite comic writers who is just this master storyteller. His name is Mark Waid. He has written some phenomenal just comics that have literally shaped the landscape of comics as it is today. The biggest one that people might know is Kingdom Come. That one was just like formative, but he's written so many comics that when I was prepping for the interview, I was looking at my comic shelf. I was like, oh yeah, this comic I love was also written by him. This comic I love was also written by him. I forgot. But so he gave two pieces of advice that were so good that I literally hung them up on my wall, and they just help, and they're plot related. So one of his things was, okay, so every scene in your story has to be connected by one of three words. Therefore, however, and occasionally meanwhile. So as you're thinking about what needs to go into your story, you figure out how the scenes fit together. But he also wrote this, which is kind of takes the pressure off you if you're stressing about the plot. Plot is not a story, or not wrote. He said it. Plot is not a story. A plot is a framework for a story. So you can have a plot that's like a Swiss watch that's beautiful, hangs together in its construction, but people don't remember the plot. What people remember is the moments when your blood is up, the moments when you're engaged and your emotions are excited. You can have the best constructed story in the world, but if it doesn't move people and engage their emotions, then it may as well be a crossword puzzle. So basically, stop stressing the plot and focus on what are the emotional beats of the story,
Mhm.
and then kind of figure out how to connect them using those connecting words.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that's good advice. I like that. I think that's true. Um, how do I map out how my story wants to go? Well, I also start with character. And I come up with the character first, and then I usually come up with I'm one of two. I either come up with the character first and think of what is the absolute worst situation I can come up with this character, or I come up with a really horrible situation. I think, who is the absolute worst character to have to deal with this situation? And that's how I start my books. But I
Torturing
always
characters is fun.
there are no happy endings in my books, so uh, I I always know my ending. I know a lot of people like to free write surprise the ending for them. I like to know where my ending is because I like to know what I am writing to. And my ending is usually
Mhm.
the opposite of my beginning. So whatever is going on in the beginning with the main character is usually the exact opposite of how the book is going to end. And then I figure out what is the big middle scene that connects these two, the beginning and ending. What is the big thing that would happen in the book in the middle? Like the big explosive event that's going to cause that like downward action towards the end of the book. So once I have those three things, the beginning, the high point in the middle, and the ending, then I start working on the other points in the story. Um I just lost my brainwave for a second. I had like a really good point that I was going to make. Um And now I can't remember what I was going to say.
That's pretty good advice so far, though.
Thanks. What was I gonna say? What were we talking about? How do you want your story to go?
Yeah. How do you map out your story?
Yeah. I had a really good thing to say, and now I can't remember what it was.
So how do you connect the beginning, middle, and end? I think is where you were going.
Yeah. Was I though? I mean, I kind of what I do if I'm working on the plot like an outline, I have to work an outline when my book is on on contract. If like the book I have to write right now is on contract as a specific date that is due, so I have to have an outline for it. Otherwise, I can't write fast enough. Um,
Yeah.
so basically, what I do is I kind of just I put out a blank document and I just kind of idea vomit possible things that could happen based on the situation that I have, and just not even in order, just kind of like the sheriff shows up. The sheriff is her dad's ex-best friend, drama or whatever. And then, somebody breaks into her house. insert wild animal, just random things that would add tension to the story. And then I go back and kind of fit them in what I think would be a good chronological order so that they hit those big beats, those big, you know, they're either leading up to that big middle point or they're falling off towards the end. That's
I like that.
that's how I work it out. That's not what I wanted to say. There was something else I wanted to say, but if it comes back to me, I will interrupt the conversation.
I am good with that. I was gonna suggest that. Then we have
That's basically what I do.
I like that. So we have another good question from Alfred. So how do you find inspiration for your stories?
Real life. True crime
My
dramas.
question is, how do I get the inspiration to stop? Because I don't have time to write all the ideas I keep having.
Yeah.
There's so
I
many.
think there's everything. I mean, everything. If I read a book and I see a line of dialogue that's interesting, or if I'm watching a TV series and I hear something that's interesting, or I see a location or a scene, or if I'm eavesdropping on the neighbors in their yard and they do something weird as they always do, then I write that down and I remember that. And
Yeah,
I mean,
I get
my
inspired.
first book was kind of inspired by my grandfather who passed away from Alzheimer's. The main character's father in the book has Alzheimer's. And so he was kind of based on him. And I kind of was like, well, what would happen if somebody like my grandfather witnessed a murder, but can't remember it and can't even tell you who it was or when it was? And, that's where that idea came from. Um, I mean, inspiration comes from everywhere. Also from other artists, just, yeah. Read as much as you
Yeah.
can, watch as much as you can, eavesdrop on as many people as possible.
Yeah, I get it from shows that I love, stories that I love, people I know. Music is a big one. I'll listen to a song, I'll be like, "Ooh, this makes me think of a scene that I need to write. Now I need to come up with the characters that go in the scene." And next thing I know, I've got a playlist that's 4 hours long for a book that I don't need to be writing. Or recently, a few months ago, my adorable nephew, my sister's, um, on my side, my sister's son, my sister bought my book, and my books are not, they're not awful, but they're not for kids. So he looked at me and he's like, "Aunt Kelly, will you write books for kids so I have something to read?" So now I have to write a kid's book. And so then I came up with the idea to write something featuring my favorite cryptid, the squonk.
Nice.
And so that I have to find time to write that now. But for those who don't know, the squonk is this cryptid that, hang on, I have a stuffed squonk that I have to
Oh my
show off
goodness.
now.
She's getting out the stuffed squonk.
I I have a prop and everything. Oh, my son named him Squeaky. He's
I
Squeaky the
love him.
squonk.
He's cute.
He's so cute. So squonks are these like adorably ugly creatures. I think they're adorable, but
I mean, it's
they're
a kind
creatures.
of a cute version of, like, you know, the alien from Alien.
Yeah. And they haunt the woods and I think in the East Coast, and they just cry all day about how ugly they think they are and how they think no one wants them. And if you catch a squawk, he just blips into a puddle of his tears. That's how they die. If you see a squonk. So I want to give a squonk a happy ending.
I
So
like
that's a
it.
spoiler for
Yeah.
whatever my next book is going to be, and it's going to be a kid's book because yeah.
I mean,
So
this might kind of go back to like the person who's just starting writing their book and isn't sure where to go. If you're not sure,
oh yeah.
read your favorite book or read. I remember now. Oh, I remember what I was going to tell you.
Yes. It's
Kaylee,
Keely.
right? Keely.
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 Yep.
For figuring out your book. Okay, mapping out your story. This is what I wanted to tell you because this is what I did with my first book. I was like, I know this is really important. Find a book that is very similar to what you want to do in style and length, and basically write down an outline for that book. Chapter 1, crime scene, prologue, whatever. Chapter 2, main character does this, and go through the whole book and just use that as like a basis, but then use your story.
I love it.
So
You're
like
so
I
smart.
took like it wasn't this book for but I took a book, I went through the whole thing. I was like, oh, it's got 50 chapters. In chapter 25 is when you hit that big middle point. So I know that my chapter 25 has to also be the big middle point. I know that in chapter 13 he meets the villain for the first time. So my chapter 13 had the character, I basically followed the outline of somebody else's book to kind of learn how the story arc should go. So find a book that you like the way it's, broken up. My recommendation would be that it's like a single timeline, single kind of point of view, so you're not making it too complicated for yourself, especially if you're new and you're not sure yet what you want. But just use them as an outline and then put in your characters and your story and your plot. Yeah.
I
It's
agree with
not, I mean, it's
Keely.
like cheating, but
That is
not cheating.
genius. It's not cheating. It's
It's
genius. It's
yeah.
genius. Also, love you, Keely. And I like Dave Mattingly's advice. Every 4 chapters, someone needs to kick in the door.
And I think it would be a great scene if one of the doors they kick in and they break their ankle. Like, it doesn't work, because it doesn't really work in real life all the time. So it would be great if,
Mhm.
you had some realism. And then you've got a problem for your character. That's the kind of thing you need to do is you need to come up with ideas like this. Like somebody breaks in the door. How do I make that part of that story even worse? Well, they don't actually break in the door because they break their ankle breaking the door. And then you've got a problem for your character for the rest of the book.
You basically just give your character problems every chapter.
Exactly.
Every chapter. Give your
Every chapter.
character
Yeah, I mean, and
problems,
that's the
give
thing
them
is too,
tension.
especially, and I think it helps too if you end every chapter on a cliffhanger. Leave every
That's why
chapter
people
so that the
can't go to sleep.
reader pretend like you're the reader. If you end on a cliffhanger, they have to turn the page. They have to keep going until the book is done.
Yes.
So just keep cliffhanger ending everything.
And Dave's advice, also read outside your genre as much as you can.
Yes,
Yes.
100%. Absolutely. Read your own genre so that you know what people are doing, so you know what your contemporaries are coming up with and what's popular. But read outside of your genre so that your voice becomes more interesting and more diverse, and you
Agreed.
learn new words that way.
I like Dave. Ugliness is beautiful. Yes. Yes, that's why I love squonks so much. They're
So
my
make your
favorite.
characters ugly in the personalities at least,
Yes.
because that's
Mhm.
interesting. That's interesting. It's interesting if your characters are not good, but if you're having trouble coming up with characters, again, who's your favorite book character? Who's your favorite TV show character? Take that character and then add a twist to them.
Mhm.
If your favorite character is, I don't know, Scully from the X-Files, you know, smart, young doctor working with spooky people, take that idea and make it fit your genre. Turn her into an elf princess who wants to pursue science instead of magic. I don't know.
I wanna read that.
Okay, well, that will be my next book. No, I'm just kidding.
Write it. I will read it. If you write it, they will come.
I might have to self-publish it because I don't think my publisher will pick it up.
Fair. Keely says she loves me too and thanks us for this groundbreaking conversation. Aw.
Anything we can do.
Dave says, Scully. Like
She's a great
so
character.
many of my
The
a
Scully
great character.
the Scully archetype is a great starting point, especially if you are in the thriller writing industry. There are a lot of Scullys in thriller books, and they always do well.
Yes. And that's the thing. So archetypes are not a bad thing. Tropes are not a bad thing, especially if you can take them and twist them and turn
Mhm.
them on their head.
I think if you
But
know them
sometimes,
well too, if you know them inside and out and you know because every genre has their tropes, and if you know how you
mhm.
can use it well, but also make it your own, that's when you're gonna really succeed.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think that's good
I
for all publishing, just good for storytelling in general.
I agree. I'm just making sure we've covered most of the things we've discussed. So I've got a couple notes that I wanted to hit here. So when we're talking about your target audience, um,
Good
I
to
have
know
a
that.
note here that yeah. Well, yeah, it's good to keep in mind who your target audience is. And this is advice for authors of all stripes. But I see some of my author friends will get down and feel like their friends aren't supporting them if they don't buy their books. And I just want to say that so your friends are not actually your target audience. Like if they buy your books, that's awesome. Super awesome. But keep in mind that so your friends might not have the money, they might not be into your genre, and depending on your friends to be your customers, to be your readers is not completely sustainable. That's not how you're going to build your writing career. The key is to really connect with people who are into your genre. And just because your friends don't buy your books or don't review your books doesn't mean that your friends aren't supporting your writing or
Mhm.
that your friends don't love you or whatever or aren't cheering you on. It just means that literally your writing may not be the genre for your friends. Or again, your friends just may not have the money. Like,
It's hard because, I think this is good advice for anybody in any creative industry, whether you're an artist or an author or an
mhm.
actor, you know, taste is very subjective. And, um, honestly, I don't think any of my friends are thriller readers. I don't even think my sisters haven't even read my book. Um,
Oh my
I don't
gosh.
I don't think. But yeah, I mean, you have to yeah, you do. You have to find your readers. And yeah, I think you can't yeah, it can be disappointing if friends or family don't support it or seem to not support it. But, that's just kind of that's, art is subjective, and there will be people out there who wanna read your book
Yes.
and who your book is meant for. And, it's a matter of just finding them. So whether you're traditionally published or self-published, you just have to kind of figure out where those people are. And if you're writing like YA or fantasy, you're really lucky because they're all over social media. Those readers are
Right.
everywhere. They are on especially Instagram, and if you're a romance writer, you need to get yourself on TikTok stat. Um, if you're a thriller writer, yeah, it's a lonely world in social media. I think most of the thriller readers
Crickets.
honestly, I think most of the thriller readers are on Twitter, which is where I'm not at, so that's probably why I can't find them.
And speaking of people, I need to share my favorite bad review because speaking of people who just your book is not going to be everyone's cup of
Oh,
tea.
your favorite bad
Even
review. Yes, share it.
my favorite, I've shared this with you before, and this review, like, just it sounds weird, but this review makes me smile because it let me find it, but it reminds me that no matter what you write, not everyone's gonna love it, and that's fine.
And
Like
I think
my
that's a
genre.
good time to bring up reviews because,
Mhm.
when you go into publishing, whatever version of publishing you go into, people are going to tell you what they think of your book, and they are not and the sad thing is when people like your book, they usually are just like, "Okay, I like that book, put it back on the shelf," and they go on to the next book. But when they don't like your book, you will find out about it. And, so you need to, kind of harden yourself to reviews. And just, know that you did the best that you could and that there are people who will like it. And if somebody doesn't like it, then it just wasn't the book for them. It just wasn't meant for them.
Yep.
But
So,
boom.
this is the review. This is actually the only 1-star review I have, which I
Okay.
think is not too bad.
Yeah, I have a rule that I will read reviews during arcs, like the first 2 weeks that arcs are out, and then when the book is published, I stop looking. I tell my publisher, I
Smart.
tell my editor, I tell my agent, if it's a good review that you think I need to see, send it to me. Otherwise, I don't look because I am soft.
That is fine. That's actually not reading your reviews is self-care.
Yeah. But sometimes a critical review can be very helpful. On my first book, I think it was my first book, somebody read one of my arcs. They sent a very critical review into my editor, and I realized from their review that there was a plot error in my book.
Which
And
is helpful.
thankfully, the book had not gone to print yet, and I changed it. So that reviewer, whoever's out there, it's been fixed.
So this review is a masterpiece. So this person, the title of the review was couldn't get past the 3rd page.
Nice. Well, they made it 3
Which
pages. That's pretty good.
yeah, and they must have skipped the prologue because what they're referencing it was the 3rd must have been the 3rd page of the 1st chapter, which
Okay.
is fine. Like people do skip prologues. That's another dirty secret. A lot of people skip prologues. So don't
Prologues could be a podcast on their own.
mhm. Well, yeah. So she says, I found the first few pages pretty presumptuous, like someone with little literary talent was trying to be overly descriptive about abilities and fight scenes.
Oh.
The book could have been way shorter without all the superfluous language. I also found it cheesy. Men running around in spandex in Antarctica is not a mental picture I would like to contemplate. So, my book is a superhero romance. It's I'm very clear about that. So if you're picking up a superhero romance and you're not expecting a joke about one of the main characters wearing spandex, that's like a rule of the genre. Like you have to make that joke.
So I remember my
So
I remember my my 1-star review. You ready? I don't even have to look it up.
yes,
I know it. I know it. I'll never forget it. I paid for Amazon 1-day delivery and it came 2 days late. 1 star.
how
Thank
dare
you.
you? How dare you deliver it? Delivery's late.
That's the thing too about
Like
reviews. They
Charles.
don't always have anything to do with anything.
Yeah, well, and like I was very clear. Like
This
she knew what I hope, and that, to be fair, I hope that reviewer found the genre that was the right fit for her. I hope she found what she was
yeah.
looking for.
I hope my
It makes me
reviewer decided
smile.
not to buy from Amazon anymore. But this is hilarious. I like this. I got one that said that too bad this isn't in Dutch. Well, I live in the Netherlands and my books are not published in Dutch yet, so I get this all the time. All the time.
That's and then I like Dave's. One of Dave's thrillers had a 1-star review on Amazon, and he because it was perfect.
Oh, that is
The,
fantastic. Actually,
the book
I had a scene in my second book edited before it went to print because my editor thought it was too gory. Um, I didn't.
was it the bird scene?
No, it was my second book, and
Oh,
it's a scene where they find a body in a fire after a fire. And they thought it was too gory, so a couple sentences got cut out. Art always has
a little
criticism.
peek into the darkness in Karen's head.
Yeah. You have to, and criticism is a huge part of any artistic career, and
Mhm.
you have to learn how to take criticism, because especially, I mean, I'm not sure with self-publishing. I guess you're taking criticism from your readers mostly, but in traditional publishing, you're going to get critiqued by the entire publishing team. So your editor is going to be like, "No, this is trash. Throw this out." Or and they're not going to say this is trash, but that's basically like, they'll say it nicely. They'll be like, I suggest you change this. which in my head is, this is trash, throw it out. So I do.
Well, one of my early beta readers kind of hated the genre, but I got so much um valid criticism from him. Like, and he said up front, he's like, this is not my normal genre, but he still gave me a lot to work with. And he was blunt,
Yeah.
but not unkind. And like, so yeah, you do have to get used to taking
Well,
that
and you
criticism.
have to, most people, like, you write a book and then it's my baby. No,
Mhm.
you
Kill
know,
your darlings.
it's yeah, you do. You have to be able to look at it from the perspective of, the reader wanting to get something out of it, the perspective of your publisher wanting to make money off of it. And sometimes the most beautiful passage needs to be cut because it just takes away from the story. Put it in a document, save it for another book, save it for your future poetry collection.
Yes.
Um, yeah, but you have to learn how to take critique very early on, or it's going to be a really hard industry to stay in.
And sometimes you do have growing to do as a writer, and that's
Yeah.
okay. That doesn't mean that you personally suck. It just means that you have growing to do as a writer.
And I think you can learn from bad critique better than you can from good critique. I mean,
Agreed.
bad feedback that something is bad. Good feedback that something in your work is bad or
Yeah.
poorly done. Yeah.
But you also have to learn which feedback to take and which feedback to just discard. Because
Yeah.
sometimes someone will give you feedback and there's no value to it.
Well, and that's an interesting thing because that's something too that for self-publishing and for traditional publishing, at the end of the day, you as the author have the say. It's your name on the book that gets published. So if you say to your editor, whether it's a self-published editor or a traditionally published editor, that you don't want to change something, if it hits the market and people don't like that thing that you didn't change, that's on you. So you need to be able
Yep.
to, s- you know, stick to your
Yep.
whatever you think is the best for your story. My new book
I
is
like
going through
her.
a situation like this right now.
Your new book, what?
There's a scene in my book that there's a little bit of concern about. And so it's going to another reader, an outside reader, to kind of see,
Ah,
is it something to be concerned about? Is it something that other readers are going to pick up on? Is it something that is problematic or divisive? Um, and then when they come
that's
back to me, I'm
important.
gonna have to decide whether to keep it or not. So we'll see what happens.
Good luck. Dave, when the superhero romance gets steamy, I hope he enrolls his pocket. Ah, I have the best friends. You did not know what you were signing up for
I
when you
didn't.
signed up to do a show with me.
No, this has been good. I think it's been a good conversation so far. I think there's been a lot of interesting points that we've hit here.
Me
I think we've
too.
have we hit the entire list? Seems like we have.
We have. I have two more pieces of advice that I wanted from that I've actually gotten from interviews that I wanted to dispense. I know we didn't specifically do this to give advice so much as talk about, but so I wanted to talk about from my interview with Shauna McGuire, who is one of my favorite authors. She specifically said, "Don't quit your day job until you're making
Oh,
enough
yeah,
income to warrant that," and that's really important advice.
that's
So
good. And I
most
think that works for
people,
self-pub and traditionally published. Because even though
yeah,
you're traditionally published, I think a lot of people think, "Oh, I'm with a big 5 publisher or big 4," depending on what the situation is gonna be here.
yeah,
"Oh, I've made it," and, even the people who are getting the big 6 figures, they're getting paid out in multiple advances over a stretch of time, and that time could be years.
mhm,
So you may not wanna quit your day job. Don't do it.
right. Writing is not always a reliable income. I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times the writers that can make an income usually are um supplementing that income with film rights in merchandising, and so that's where usually it becomes a day job.
So usually the writers in traditional publishing who are usually the most comfortable are the ones that have a very large backlist, like a large back catalog that they're sitting on, that are just, maybe one alone is not making a lot in a month, but like all of them together equate to maybe, a regular job in another field. And then, yeah, film rights, because especially if it's nice to have film rights kind of sold, but not actually made into a film, because then they are paying you basically to keep the rights. So you'll get like usually you get like a monthly stipend or something for that. So if you have a larger back catalog and you've sold some film rights that haven't actually been produced into films yet, then you're probably doing pretty well. And when I say pretty well, you're probably doing like normal job well. Whatever a normal job is. But it also it depends too on whether you get an advance or whether you've earned out your advance if you did get one, or whether you're just making royalties. There's a lot of different, things to consider about how much money you're actually making. If you are with an agent, so the agent has to get paid as well from your earnings. That comes off the top of your earnings before you get paid, or whether you don't have an agent. Which is a reason why some people will do the route that I did and not get an agent, because they're already with a publisher. They like the publisher. They don't feel like they need the agent. They make more money.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, don't quit your day job.
Don't quit your day
Whoever
job.
You live with who pays the bills, don't let them quit their day job.
Get yourself a sugar person.
Sugar person. Your cat will not pay your bills, even if he's the most liked on Instagram.
Unfortunately.
Sadly.
But the kind of the more optimistic piece of advice, I don't know if I want to call it optimistic, but so my friend Santiago Cirillo, the first time I met him, one of the nicest humans, but so he said something to me that really resonated. He was like, do not define yourself by your day job. Your day job is what you do to pay the bills. But if you're a writer or an artist or any type of creator, that's what you are.
Yeah, that's a
if
good
you're
piece.
writing, you're a writer.
That's interesting. We actually had a conversation about this exact topic at the gym this morning.
Love that.
So we are at the gym. I'll just a short story to kind of like explain that. We're at the gym and we have these like giant soft blocks to jump on, and you can keep velcroing on to make the blocks higher and higher and higher. And a lot of times you hit a point where the block looks like it's too high. But if you stand there and just kind of put your foot on top, you know that your leg length just standing is high enough to touch it. And it's kind of all about seeing yourself actually landing on top of the block, like kind of in your head. It's a mental game. And if you tell yourself you're a writer, then you'll believe that you're a writer. Like if you tell yourself that you will jump on top of those blocks because you know you're tall enough and you know you have enough reach, but if you see yourself hitting your knees against the side of the block instead of actually getting on top of it, then that's exactly what you're going to do. So yeah, I think that's a horrible analogy to what you said. Yeah, you have to if you're an artist, tell yourself that you're an artist, and tell other people you are too. Say it with power.
Which and Dave says from 9 to 5 you make a living, from 5 to 9 you make a life.
I like that. That needs to be on a coffee mug.
It does.
Yeah.
I like it. Dave, do you have merch?
My own stunts, but never on purpose.
He should, Dave.
That needs to be on a t-shirt. He needs merchandise.
He does. If he doesn't have merchandise, I would be surprised because again, Dave is one of the coolest people I know. So, yeah, and like you said, oh, he's merchless. Okay, well, I'm gonna make Dave Mattingly
Come on,
band
Dave, get
merchandise.
on it.
Um, but so like you said, tell people you're a writer, tell people you're an artist. That kind of ties into another little note that I had. So
But maybe don't tell people what you're actually working on.
no, keep that under your hat. But if you have a book out, tell everyone.
Yeah,
If
that's
you're in the
hard to do.
grocery line, tell the cashier.
Yeah.
Tell post on Facebook about it or whatever social media you're on multiple times. You may feel like you're a broken record, but a dirty little secret about social media algorithms is they suppress posts that they think are sale posts that have outside links and all that. So you may feel like people are getting sick of your post about your book.
Oh, but nobody's seeing it.
Nobody's seeing it. Also, if you're bringing it up to people in that world outside of social media, you may feel like you're telling people over and over again. That's your perception. Other people do not actually feel that way. It's really important to bring it up multiple times because I've actually gotten book sales from bringing things up to people more than once. And I promise that you may feel like you're being annoying. You're not. Friends, if you think I'm being annoying, feel free to, hit me up in my DMs and tell me, be like, yeah, you're like a door-to-door salesperson. That's fine. But that's fine. Like obviously you don't want to be like that. Like, have you bought my book yet? Have you bought? But if it comes up in conversation, or if you get the chance to bring it up in conversation, because obviously it's a part of your life, you're excited about it. It's okay to talk about it. It's important to talk about it.
Well, I mean, you are your
Why wouldn't you?
best you are your best promotion, right? So, if you're not
Exactly.
gonna
And
stand up for your own artwork, nobody else is going to. Yeah.
yeah, and advertising
Sure.
works through repetition. Like, we don't think about it, but most advertising is repetition and it does work. And most of the people in your life will be happy to hear about the things you're excited about. And if they're not, that's kind of on them. And maybe,
Yeah.
like, that does, again, that this kind of goes back to no, your friend should not feel obligated to buy your books, but it's okay to talk about it. And if
Mhm.
you get a book sale off of it, awesome.
But if any of my
It's
friends are
okay.
watching this, you should buy my books.
Yes. My friends should
But I
also
won't
buy
ask
Karen's
I won't
books.
ask you if you did.
My friends should also buy Karen's books because they're amazing.
Oh, thank you. They don't have happy endings.
No, they. I feel like the first book has a bittersweet ending, but
It's
it's
bittersweet. It's, oh, okay, the first of all of my books, the first one has the most acceptable ending. My next book, the ending well,
spoilers.
the ending, nobody's going to like it, but
There you go, Carl.
it's the best
If you
ending
are
for
my friend and a plumber and I hire you, then you should buy my book. It goes both ways. I mean, that's okay.
I'm not a plumber, but I
French.
can lay floors and I can
There
paint.
you go.
So
Well, at the last convention that Carl and I were at together, we just traded books, which was an excellent deal.
I
I
mean, that's
was
another thing
delighted
too
by
that's
it.
interesting, never underestimate your other author, like, connections, even if they're not friends. Some of the people who have been the biggest supporters of my books are people I've actually never met, who are just other authors who enjoyed the book, you know, and decided to talk about it on their own. So, um, I
Yes.
mean, people will it people will people will stand up and support you. People will go out of their way to talk about your books if they like your books, and if they like you. So, be nice to people
Yes. Technically, you and I have never
and
met.
write exciting books.
And technically, you and I have never met in person. So
This is true. This is true.
which is
See?
weird because it feels like we have.
And you should buy Scorcher. Wait, I'm backwards.
I warned you about that. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Uh,
Because it's going to be an audiobook soon.
I am so
We haven't
excited
talked
about
about this.
that.
Your book's gonna be an audiobook now, right?
Yes, it is. So
So
it
tell us
got
about
fully
the
funded.
self-publishing process to getting an audiobook done.
Oh yes. So for do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
No, you go first, because I don't know how I wouldn't even know where to start if I wanted to have somebody else read my
Oh,
books.
there are multiple pathways. I was very lucky in that I know quite a few friends who are talented narrators who are amazing. They're, oh my gosh, they're so amazing. Like, and so I approached them and I talked to them about how much their pay would be, and we together we looked at like industry standards, which I I did for transparency's sake. I linked that on the Indiegogo because really the funds I was raising was to pay my narrators fairly, which is not cheap,
No,
because the work they do does not come cheap, should not come cheap. It's a lot of work
it
for
is a lot of work.
so there's an article linked on my Indiegogo site that explains why audiobook narrators get paid what they do, what the um and so when I approached my friends, I was just like, "Hey, how do you feel about doing this as a crowd fund?" Because I didn't have the $2,500 out of pocket to pay
Which is
them
really exciting
what
because
they did.
I have heard about people, like, crowdfunding the publication of their books, but I had never thought about it for audiobooks before.
It's, honestly, I was looking around at crowd funds that did something similar, and there's not many out there. A lot of authors, when they wanna do an audiobook version, there's other ways to go where the authors can either record it themselves. But to me, I wanted to be able to listen to my audiobook, and so many of us have a hard time listening to the sound of our own voice, which there's reasons for that, but, I wanted to have, and I absolutely love audiobooks, and having a great narrator makes or breaks it, so I just wanted to have good narrators. So, other options, you can also go through, um Amazon has Audible Creators, it's ACX. I forget what it stands for. But you can go through Amazon's that program and you can find narrators that way and you can arrange pay for them that way. And there's all sorts of pay tiers that way. But I knew who I wanted.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure, I raised the funds, and so we just went through it that way. And then I was like, okay, so I know what it's gonna cost. I know what I need. And yeah, I was really excited. Thank you to everyone who did contribute. I made sure I offered perks that would make it worth everyone's while. I also had a few very generous people contribute way more than I was offering perks for to make it happen. So that
That's
was awesome.
fantastic. No, that is,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
and that's kind of like, it's a tribute to, like, your supporters, that the people enjoy your book enough and, support you enough as an author that they will go out of their way to do that. I mean, I think it's fantastic. I'm so excited for you because audiobooks are so big right now. Audiobooks, I mean, I don't know much about self-publishing, but if I were going to self-publish, I would be setting aside money now for an audiobook because so many more people are reading audiobooks these days because you can do it while you're doing everything. Some people are listening to audiobooks while they're doing their jobs. I mean, while you're taking care of your kids, while you're cleaning your house, while you're hiking in the woods. I mean, audiobooks are a
it's,
really big thing right now. And
I
it's
literally,
making books so much more accessible to people who can't get books otherwise. And so audiobooks would be a great investment for self-publishing, I think.
that is the advice I actually received last year too. And I was like, okay, well, I've been wanting to do this anyways. So speaking of support, Carl said Scorcher is sitting in my living room where any guest can
Ah,
see it. Carl, you're the best. Literally the best. He's one of my favorite people. And Carl says, congrats on your full funding. Thank you, Carl, and thank you for
yay.
contributing. And I can actually show off. This is one of the fun perks that I ordered. were
Nice.
bookmarks that I designed.
I love it. I
And
will probably do bookmarks for my next book if it has a good cover, which I think it's gonna have a great cover. But I didn't do it for my first couple books, but I want to this time.
yeah.
So that's exciting.
Aw. Alfred's animation page
Thank
says
you
this
for coming,
conversation was
Alfred. I really
thanks,
appreciate it.
Alfred. Yeah, well, so I the redhead on the bookmarks, that was another artist that I found on DeviantArt, and that redhead, I was just like, "That is Aiden. That is my main character." And so I contacted her when I was looking for a cover artist, but by the time she got back to me, I had signed up with Daphne, my cover artist, and commissioned something. But so her name is Evelyn Levac, and she is so talented, and she just that was just art that she had made for fun, and she gave me permission to use it
That's
for
fantastic.
anything. I'm still in contact with her too. So when I was going through and making this Indiegogo, I talked to her and commissioned for her to specifically do something for Marty in the same style. And oh my God, she's so talented. And then I checked with her again. I was like, is it still okay if I continue to use this artwork of this redhead that literally is just Aiden in my mind?
Yeah.
And you know, I talk to her every so often and just make sure she's still okay with me using it for commercial purposes, and she's been so generous. And in that case, because back then I did not have much money, in that case, she just was like, "Hey, you don't need to pay me," because I did offer, but she's like, "No, you don't need to pay me, you know, the art's already made." And so, oh my god, she's so nice. Both my artists are so nice. Very, very, very sweet people.
Oh,
So yeah, but she made the Marty art. She actually does art as her job. And yeah, she was just like, "Yeah, I don't really do stuff like that usually." So very
I'm
kind.
looking at Keely's comment here,
Oh, sorry.
and you work at Powell's? I am jealous. This is a
Oh,
bookstore I really want to I'm assuming this is Powell's bookstore, right? Like the famous
yeah,
bookstore? It's on my bucket list of places to go to, possibly in the next year or so. I'm very
that's
excited.
awesome.
So it's so cool that you work at a bookstore. Ah,
Well, that means there is a trip to the United States in your future.
there is. I might be there to I don't know. Nothing is set in stone yet, but I may be on the West Coast in October or November.
Ooh,
We'll see. Kind of depends
that's
on some other things, other book related things, but I might be there. I might be there then. So
not that that helps me because I'm in the Midwest, but
no, yeah. Unfortunately, my family was in the Midwest and they all decided to move to California this last year. So
wow.
now I don't have to go back to Ohio to visit anymore. I get to go to California instead, which is exciting.
Well, you just need to plan a trip to the Midwest for like C2E2. Just get
Oh,
a table
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Get a table there.
Ah, fantastic.
Come to Portland. That is where Keely lives.
Well, see, the reason I know about this is because I have some friends who live in that area and they go up to Powell's all the time. And they're always like, when you come to visit us, we're going to take you to Powell's. I'm like, yes, please, because I want to go there so badly. I'll bring
That
books.
sounds awesome.
I'll
Yes.
give
Maybe you could talk to Keely and arrange a book signing. You should do that.
away.
You should totally do that. Like,
If I
that
have
is
books in the United States to sign, I will do that. That is another thing that's tricky,
oh,
about
yeah,
books being printed. I'm with HarperCollins technically in the UK, so my books get
that's
printed in
true.
the UK. I have a US publisher, but on my first 2 books, sadly, because sales were not as good as they hoped for, they didn't print them in the US. So if anybody tries to buy them, it's a
Oh,
longer shipping
no.
time because they're being shipped from the UK. Um, but there are some
That
it's the 3rd book is looking promising in North America right now. No fingers are still crossed. Um, but
yes.
fingers are still crossed, but I think there's hope. There's hope. Thank you.
But
I
the
appreciate that.
audiobook and the ebook are easily available. And again, the audiobook is such a treat. Oh, It's a treat
I mean,
for the ears.
that was fun thing about my narrator. So that was interesting. They for my first two books, they had to find somebody who spoke English but could do the names, because I have a lot of Scandinavian names, Scandinavian words, like settings. And so they found the narrator who did one of the versions of the Millennium Trilogy, like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because
Yes.
he already knew how to do those accents and say the words of street names and such. The exciting thing was, and this is where, like, I don't think people realize that audiobook narrators, I mean, is such an art form. There was a character in my book series who is from a different part of the country than the rest of the characters. She's from the southern part of the country, and in the southern part of Sweden, they speak with a very specific dialect. Where if you're from any other part of Sweden, and one of these people starts speaking, you're like, oh, she's from the south. Like, we know the way she rolls her R's, we know she's from the south. And the audiobook narrator, Matt, he really wanted to make sure that there was a distinction when he did her voice, so that readers could
Wow.
hear, oh, her voice sounds different than the rest of the cast. And he was so fantastic. He reached out to some friends he had in Sweden, and he said, hey, there's a character in this book. She's from this part of the country. I have to speak her voice in English. What English accent could I use that would make her distinguishable from the other people who are Swedish, but he's reading with an English accent? And they all agreed. They're like, well, you should just use Welsh, because my narrator is actually Welsh. That's his normal dialect and accent. But when he reads audiobooks, he reads with standard British English. But he got to
Oh,
do the character of Esme with his Welsh accent, and it worked perfectly, because you can
it's
hear that
just
she's from someplace else. And it was fun for him too, because he's like, I finally get to use my Welsh accent for a character. I never get to use that. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it was so cool to hear the research he did on his own, because he's acting these characters. He's not just reading the book. He becomes the characters when he does their dialogue. And I mean, the fabulous amount of research he went into.
that is wonderful.
Yeah,
And that's the beauty of audiobooks. Like
really.
there's an audiobook series that's full cast recordings that has a tagline, a movie in your mind. But even when it's just one narrator, it's still like that. I With a good narrator, it just transports you, and oh, that's why I feel so strongly
And I'm
about
very
them.
excited. I don't know who my new narrator is going to be yet, but my publisher knocked it out of the park with my first two books, and I have no doubt they will on this new one.
Oh
So
yeah,
I'm excited.
that's
Sadly, it won't
so
be Matt because
exciting.
the character is a woman, but I'm excited. I think
I'm
it'll be
sure they'll get someone fantastic though.
yeah.
That is exciting. So, yeah, I think now we have covered everything
I think we
except
have.
for,
Yeah. So if there's nobody else has questions, does anybody else have questions? Is anybody else still here? It's just us.
oh, here's Sarah. Hi, Sarah. This is my friend Sarah Frades, who's
Oh,
also an author and fantastic. She says she's sorry she's late.
hi, Sarah.
She is going to throw in some questions, so excellent. And oh, we do have some latecomers. Hi, Ryan. Ryan just got done with the show. So, Karen, if you don't mind sticking
I don't
around for
mind
a third,
staying. I mean, it's way past the
excellent.
bedtime of everybody here. There's nothing going on here.
And Ryan has to ask this question.
Hold
Favorite
on.
Star Wars movie, show, and book?
Oh, I have the answer to one of these. Okay.
Sarah, do not be sorry. We're having a blast.
My favorite
So you
Star
don't
Wars
feel bad.
movie is Empire Strikes Back.
Solid.
My favorite Star Wars show is Andor. I can back this up with facts, but I'm not going to. And my favorite Star Wars book. Okay, I have a first favorite. My first favorite is The Courtship of Princess Leia. I know it's not Timothy Zahn. I do like Timothy Zahn, but I have a personal history with this book. And my second favorite is iJedi.
Nice. Ryan's on the Star Wars reading kick.
On the Star Wars reading kick. Everybody should be on a Star Wars reading kick. Favorite Marvel and DC character? I do like Rogue One. It's a good one. Favorite Marvel character is Doctor Strange, but like old school Doctor Strange with the billowy blue sleeves.
Yes.
Not like MCU Strange is cool, but I'm into the old school Doctor Strange. I'm also a big Nightcrawler fan and a big Magneto fan.
What about DC?
DC is hard for me, and I'm gonna be really cliche when I say this. I like Superman. I like the truth, justice. I love the glasses. I love the cheese. He's just inspiring. I love Superman. I love Superman.
Me too. So Dave obviously says Rogue One, Mandalorian, and iJedi.
Good choices.
And so Sarah says, so far as publishing traditionally versus self-publishing, which do you suggest over the other? And how do you decide which fits you as an author
Ooh, that's a
best?
good question. How do you fit? How much control do you want to have over your book?
It really does come down to that. It's how
No.
much creative control do you want to have?
I mean, that's a big
And
part of it. And I think too is just, why do you want to publish in the first place is a good question to ask yourself before you decide whether you want to traditionally publish or self-publish. Because if your goal is to make a lot of money, you won't make a lot of money.
spoiler alert. If you want to be the next Stephen King,
If you want to be the next Stephen King and you decide to go the self-publishing route, you will be working 150 hours a week or more forever.
until you die.
But if you go traditionally, it's a betting game. Either way, you have to put in a lot of work. Either way, the process is usually long, unless you're lucky. And how much work how many hats do you want to wear, I guess is the best question to ask yourself first. I want to wear one hat. I want to write the book. The end. I don't want to be hiring editors and finding cover designers and marketing. I mean, you have to market your book even as a traditional published author, but I don't want to have to do all of the marketing. I don't want to carry that load on my shoulders. I'm just not good at those things. And I'm lazy. And I need to have time to watch the Star Wars shows. So my priorities. Also, I always wanted to have my book on a shelf in a bookstore. That is harder to do with self-publishing. It's not impossible, but it is harder. You have to do a lot of work to get yourself into a bookstore, into a brick and mortar bookstore.
It very much is. It is doable. But yeah, so I kind of like wearing a lot of hats. I even have to do that in my day job.
I mean, every self-published author I know, they like to wear the hats. So
there are times when I wish I could hand it off to someone else, but I'm also really lucky in that my best friend and I are so tangled up in all our creative stuff that Crayley does help me out with stuff. So and vice versa.
yeah.
Like we have a symbiotic relationship.
I mean, I think
we're so codependent.
Your strengths. You have to know your strengths and your weaknesses, not only as a writer and as an author, but as everything else that comes along with publishing. And you have to know, I mean, even if you want to go traditional publishing, you have to recognize that you are going to be expected to do more than just write your book.
Yep.
How much of that you want to be able to, you're good at? Like, what are your strengths? What can you invest in? What can you afford to invest in? These are all questions you should ask about before you decide which direction to go into.
Sarah says you said you had to market your book after traditional publishing also. Okay, first of all, Sarah, you're pretty good at marketing your self-published book. Your Instagram and TikTok videos for your book are amazing. That tip you gave me about getting your book on consignment into stores, I hadn't even thought about that. And the fact
Ooh,
that
that is a good point.
it was a really good tip. And after she gave me that tip, I started looking into it and I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
And I didn't know this was a thing for traditional published authors either. You can actually do this as a traditionally published author at book festivals and book fairs, which I did not know that you could do that, but you can do that also.
By the way, speaking of book festivals are fantastic, whether you're self-published or traditionally published. I did one last year that was really small. It was at UW Milwaukee, and I only did 4 hours because I didn't know what it was going to be like. And I did so well. I was like, my books were flying off the table.
I
And
got
I
my
also
agent
had,
at a book festival, so like that's how I got my agent. And I didn't go there necessarily thinking I would get one. Um,
yeah,
so that's yeah. Book
and
festivals
I,
are a fantastic way to get information and connections and sell books. Yeah.
yep, highly recommend. Yeah. And I don't know if the book festival I did was similar to the book festival you did. Mine was like basically a book con where everyone
Mine
had
was interesting.
tables.
So mine was more of it was a thriller festival. So it was based on thriller books,
Ooh,
crime books, and horror. Horror is often added into that category as well. Um, and it was like a 4-day event, and 3 days um, where you could go, and it was just panels. 3 days of panels of authors talking about different subjects or agents talking about different subjects in publishing, in book
that's beautiful.
marketing, reading, how to write books, how to plot books, like literally every topic related to. There was FBI agents there talking about how to write about FBI agent characters. I mean,
I need to go to
professional
this.
big authors go to these things to learn things they don't know. And then there was also a day where you could pitch your book to an agent. You had like There's like a speed dating thing. You could go through and you
Yep.
could speed date with as many agents as you could possibly talk to in a very short period of time. And they also had something called Consult Fest, where you could sign up for 15 minutes with an agent. They read the first 5 pages of your book and your query letter, and then
Wow.
gave you um, advice on how to improve it before you go on the querying
That
journey. And
is
that's how I
so
got my agent.
worthwhile. That's amazing.
I sat down with 4
Okay,
agents,
so
and they were like,
Sarah, you and I are going to this thing in New York.
I mean, they
But
have them all
also,
over. You can just Google them. They have them for all different kinds. There's a big one that's just there's a really big one that's just for romance, and all genres of romance. And I think it's always advertised under the Romance Writers of America
mhm,
website. But you can just Google book festivals. There's a big
yep.
thriller one in California this year that changes location every year. Um, there's a big one in Iceland in November, which I might go to. We'll see.
Ooh,
But they're all over the place. They're all over the place. And yes, you do have to
yeah.
market your own book, even in traditional publishing. Um,
It's it's a
it's
lot of work.
it's a lot of work. I didn't really do much for my first 2 books. I'm going to try and do more now. I'm 6 months out, so I'm about the time period where you have to start doing it. But until I have my book cover, I can't really do too much. So
Well,
getting on
you know what?
podcasts helps. Going to book festivals and getting on panels. And a lot of times you can just email the festival and be like, hey, I'm a thriller, romance, whatever writer. I'd be interested in, talking on these subjects at your festival, and they'll throw you on a panel if they have a space for you.
Yeah, that's Definitely just putting yourself out there, connecting
Well,
with
there was
people, that's the way to go.
another nerdy question earlier.
Oh, movie you can rewatch over and over.
What's your answer?
Oh boy, I have a lot. I have a lot of comfort movies.
Okay, break it down to 2. Pick 2 totally different genres. 2 totally different genres.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Ever After with Drew
Oh,
Barrymore. That's like,
that's a good
mm.
one. Okay.
And then The Mummy. That's my all-time
Ah,
favorite
okay.
movie. That is the world's most perfect movie, okay?
It is really
And we
good.
do not have time for me to tell you all why. Everyone just agrees.
Okay, I am gonna go with because I am a master of like random. I'm gonna go with Star Trek 4: The Voyage Home with the whales and The Fugitive with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones.
Solid choices.
Ooh, Big Trouble. Oh, a Little China. I love Clue. Clue is a fantastic movie.
Ooh, that is the best movie.
Clue is a masterclass in storytelling. So if you want to write books that have interesting plot lines, Clue is the movie to watch. What do you Oh, here's a good
Okay, so Sarah's
one.
oh,
What
like okay, let's ask Keely's question first and then we'll ask okay. Now she has to ask your favorite Disney princess. Loki.
Loki. Loki is a Disney princess. And Princess Leia
Loki's
counts
absolute
right now.
yes.
But if we're going traditional Disney princesses, okay, if we're including the Pixar Disney princesses, I'm gonna go with Merida. If we're just doing flat animation, I'm gonna go with Belle because she reads books.
Solid choice.
But probably Princess Leia
Ariel.
and Loki.
Princess Leia is the best. Okay.
Who does Oh, Shuri.
Loki.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Loki. Oh, wrong side.
Oh, Dave, yes.
Okay, let's go to the hard
Ariel.
question.
Okay, so the hard
Ariel
question.
is a good one. I'm excited for the new Ariel movie. Um, what do you do to market yourself on social media? Hashtags have not worked for me on Instagram and TikTok.
Ooh,
Okay,
this one's tough.
I have some more experience on Instagram so far. I've just recently gotten into TikTok successfully on one of my TikToks and not so successfully on the other. Um, Instagram, okay, first of all, hashtags are not really going to work anywhere. I don't think. I think hashtags are kind of a scam. Or well, not a scam, but I feel like it's like it lures you into a false sense of security that people are actually going to see your post. On Instagram, it's a lot about responding to other people's posts. If you show interest in other people's posts and comment, you can't just like it. You have to actually comment and say something and kind of start a dialogue or ask a question. That is how you're going to get more followers on Instagram. And that's how you're going to get more people to see your books. I think Instagram is kind of one of those things where if you comment, it sees that you're like invested and you can't just like hearts. You need to actually like put words. I think somebody told me once it had to be more than 6 words to actually kind of count. Because Instagram, especially in the book and reading and the writing community on Instagram, you can hashtag writing community actually. You click on that and you'll find like everybody who's in it. Those people, they build little communities basically based on who talks to them and um, who connects with them. And I think Instagram, you have to show a good balance between what you're doing as a writer and in your personal life. That's kind of what's worked for me on that platform. Having a cute cat helps too. Or if you're really good at making like aesthetic pictures, of coffee cups. I am not good at that. But I have a cute
Same.
cat. TikTok. TikTok. I love TikTok actually.
I think you need to do a funny dance.
Yeah, I think, TikTok is so I have 2 TikToks. I have one where I just do ridiculous cosplay stuff, and I have one that's
Which
like
I
my
love.
author TikTok that's supposed to be the professional one. I'm sure you can guess which one does better. Um, yeah, TikTok, you got to use the trending sounds, but then you have to twist it in a way that it's, that's writing related. Talking about your book works pretty well on TikTok. Harder on Instagram because it's pictures mostly. This
Dave is correct. The best social platform to use depends on the audience you want to reach.
And I
So
would
age
say
range.
pick one that you feel the most comfortable with and, like, really invest in that one social media until you feel like, "Okay, I've got a handle on this. I think I can add another one onto it." Um,
Agreed.
because, the Instagram community and the TikTok community are 2 completely different communities, and they're looking for 2 completely different things. Like, the people that are on TikTok, they're either looking for, like, straight up writing advice if they're wannabe or aspiring authors, or they're looking for their next read. And so in order to show off your book as the next read, you need to kind of just follow what everybody else is doing, like follow the kind of the style of like the movie trailer type making things. Or what's really popular is to do what Geneva Rose does and just start talking as if you're the main character in your book, but don't tell people it's fake until the end of the video. Like
I've seen those
hook
TikToks.
them. Yeah.
Those do hook me though.
Yeah, they do.
And
They work.
they
You
do
know,
work.
the Geneva Rose and the Colleen Hoover method. I mean, those are the 2 big authors on TikTok that are, like, blowing it out of the water. So they're the ones to follow and see how they're doing it. But they're totally different styles.
Mhm. That's good advice.
I don't know. I'm not
I
sure if it's
am
helpful.
still
It's hard.
and yeah, just I don't have good advice because I'm still cracking all of this. It's it's been a lot. Aw. Thanks, Sarah. Sarah says,
I
thank you
think
so
the
much. This has
I
been
think you'll find out that when you really invest in one of them and you build a community on one of them, then, those people will invest in your book whether they read it or not. A lot of the people who follow me on Instagram, they are not thriller readers and they're not thriller writers, but they've kind of invested in me as part of their community, and so they've bought my book. They'll probably never read it, that's fine. I've bought their books too, for the exact same reason.
which is awesome.
Yeah. A little bit harder to do that on TikTok at the moment. It's pretty saturated with certain books. So if you're trying to promote your own book on TikTok, I would say just kind of go full force, dive in the deep end kind of thing, knowing that you're going to be repeating yourself, kind of like you said earlier. It's going to sound like you're selling, because it's going to take some time for the algorithm to kind of catch up to you and push you out there. Because you basically have to have a certain number of followers before you start to really see like an uptick in what you're doing. Or-
Repetition
Yeah,
is
repetition.
it works. It
Yeah.
it's it feels annoying, but it works.
I actually did an experiment on TikTok the other day where I posted 3 videos. It was the exact same format, the exact same trending sound. I just changed the words on the screen. I did the same thing. It was like the same routine, the same skit. I just changed the words on the screen. And it was like TikTok realized I was doing something. I don't know. And like the first video
Interesting.
got like 3,000 views. Then the second one got like 25,000 views. And the third one, the last time I checked, was up to 30. So I don't
That's
know,
wild.
and I've never had that before on TikTok, but that's something you could try. You could just pick one trending sound and do it 3 times. I did it, like, in the day. I did posted them all in the same day, so all my viewers were like, "Wow, you found your new thing." But it's just a test, but everybody saw it. So,
That is
too
wild.
bad too bad it wasn't about my books.
But if
Next time.
you get new followers, it leads them in. No such thing as bad PR. I mean,
Mm.
there is, but that's another.
Is
I
Yeah.
think that's a terrible note to end on. But
No, we won't
so,
end on that.
Karen, where can
Yeah.
people find you?
Well, don't come to my house because that's creepy. No, I
That's also an expensive flight. So 0 to 10 stars. Do not
um,
recommend.
so I am most active on Instagram at Karin Nordin author. Also on Twitter at Nordin author, because there's not enough letters to the whole name. I am also on TikTok at Karin Nordin author. But if you want to follow my really fun TikTok that has absolutely nothing to do with my books at all, you can find me at Jazzercise Loki.
It is a delight.
Yeah.
Jazzercise Loki is my favorite alter ego of yours.
Yeah,
I love
thank you.
Jazzercise Loki.
I am currently doing 7 of 9 cosplays. So if you're into Star Trek, that's the place to be right now.
Yes.
No. But yeah, I mean, all my books can be found at whatever your favorite book retailer is, in ebook, audiobook, and paperback. And
Let
the
me
new
show
one is
them
out
off.
in ebook and audiobook in September, and the paperback will be out in November, just in time for the holidays. So if you want to give some of your loved ones a suspense thriller with a very horrible ending, my book is one to check out. But I can't tell you what it's called, but it has the same title as a very famous song.
That narrows it down. We'll totally guess it. Hey, you know what, y'all? If you're watching the replay, guess in the comments. Let's see who can guess. Karin cannot confirm until her title, but guess in the comments, and then you can feel smug if you were right once Karin announces. So
Yeah.
drive up our
The
algorithm.
title
by guessing in the
is
comments.
the same title as a rock song from the 70s, early 80s.
Ooh, okay, a few more hints. Okay, so rock song from the early 70s or
I think late
80s.
70s. I think it's
Guess in
late
the
70s, early
comments.
80s. I have to check it out. I can't remember exactly, but it's a good
Okay,
one.
so you
And
get
once it's out, once the title is out, all of my TikToks will be using this song, so you'll know it.
nice. So you'll get bragging rights if you guessed right
Yes.
before the title is announced. I love it. So the easiest way to track my stuff, besides, ooh, I like Sarah's already guessing. Don't
Ooh,
stop believing.
that is close.
Ha! Oh.
But it's gotta
The
be a little bit
easiest
more,
way
you
to
gotta think more sinister.
nice. So the easiest way to find my stuff is, besides being on this channel or any Phoenix Sisters cosplay anywhere, is to go to kellyguentner.com, KELLYGUENTNER. My Indiegogo for the aforementioned audiobook is still open. And actually, even after the Indiegogo period officially ends, you can still order the audiobook and all the perks through Indiegogo. That's kind of a nice thing that they just leave it open and then you are basically ordering on demand, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to run the ad for that to take us away. So, Karin, do you have any parting words before I do that? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I mean, I think everybody who's watched this, who's stuck with us for the live or who is here for the replay, thank you so much for being here. And for all of these fantastic guesses here in the comments, I'll let you my parting words will be that it's a Fleetwood Mac song. So
Ooh, another hint. I love it.
but yeah, thank you, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
I hope
And
so. Yeah, if
if
you want to see us come back, also say that.
Yeah,
So
and if
thank you
anybody
all
has
for
any
being
questions that
here.
didn't get answered, you can find me on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. Shoot me a message.
Yes, do. And Karin, thank you for being here. This was so fun.
Thank you.
And
All right, let's
seriously,
roll
y'all,
it.
buy Karin's books. You won't regret it.
Thanks. All right.
Aiden had always imagined flying to be more exhilarating than this. Instead of soaring through the air with nothing else to do but enjoy the view, she was bogged down with memories as her life raced through her thoughts. As the icy expanse below rushed up to meet her, Christmases and birthdays and lazy Sundays flew through her mind, occasionally punctuated by the dying screams of her parents. She'd come a long way from being that little girl that was once found in the ashes of the family home, but there were times when she felt just as lost as she had then. She pulled the cord on her backpack and a sharp tug yanked through her body. The echoes of laughter and snatches of screams disappeared once the ground's ascent slowed. Her mind cleared and the past retreated to the hidden corner of her thoughts as she lightly touched to the ground. Once again there was only this moment, only this reality. All that remained was the mission. This was as it should be.
Now it was his job to back up Fantôme, one of his teammates, while she delivered the virus to the scientist. Speaking of the heroine, the woman with silvery hair and a ghost-like complexion approached him through the woods. She gave him a terse but polite nod. "Good to see you, Chill." "You too, Fantôme, though I'll be happier when this is all over with." "I'm sure you'll feel safer once the virus is destroyed. Are you sure you can trust this scientist of yours?" "I'm sure. The champion wouldn't have sent us to him if he didn't believe he could be trusted." Beside him, he thought he heard a chuckle. He looked over at Fantôme in surprise, but her face showed no signs of laughter. A hot sensation collided with Chill's back. It spread through his veins, and his skin prickled in pain. He groaned and received a fist to the gut. He fell backwards, his skin still tingling in pain. A flash of white light filled his eyes, and another pulse of heat impacted him. He tried to control the twitching from the second impact and directed a wall of ice at his attackers. Fantôme's face bent over him, melting into a tan skin tone, her hair darkening to a jet black. She reached into his suit and retrieved the vial. "Trust is for the naive,"